Welcome to Tetrakan Super Monoblock. This video is going to be a review, specifications overview, comparison sort of a video about this Tascam 424 Mark II. It's intended as a buyer's guide for someone who's in the market for a Portastudio, or just for people who are interested in the history of such things. I've had a little bit of trouble trying to pin down exactly when this unit was released. Usually when I'm dating these things, I'm looking for archived press reviews, print ads, or the copyright year that's in the user manual. The user manual that I have for this unit doesn't have a copyright year in it, and I can't find any of that press information. What I can tell you is that 44 Mark I, 488 and 464 were 1992, and the 44 Mark III was 1998. So this will have come out somewhere in the middle of that period. So I would say that 1994 or 1995 is a good guess for when this was released. The only reference to the price that I could find was hearsay from a forum. Someone saying that it was $599 when it came out using an inflation calculator. That translates to about $1,000 in today's money, which seems consistent with the prices that I've found for equivalent Portastudios. It wasn't a toy, it was the sort of thing that you'd need to be relatively wealthy or save up for quite a long time to buy. It wasn't the kind of thing that students or school children were going to buy on a whim. It's relatively small and lightweight, certainly weighs less than some of its predecessors like the 244. It's a little bit narrower, though a little bit deeper than a 244. You'd need some kind of protective case to take it on public transport, but it's certainly not something that you would require two people to lift. The features on it are fairly comprehensive. It's not a budget model, it's the higher end of the market that it was pitched at. The feature set lies somewhere in between its predecessor, the 424, and its big brother or sister, the 464. Like the 424, it only has 4 channels, without independent channels for your effects returns. Now, that's not quite true, because you've got these inputs for a channel 5, 6, and 7, 8, but you can see there's no EQ associated with that. They don't have their own faders. It's just a trim pot at the top and nothing else. But it has a mid-range EQ that the 424 lacked. It has XLR inputs for all 4 channels. If I boot up, you get this scrolling Tascam logo, which must have been mind-blowing to a pre-internet generation person who saw that. But you can see it's got a backlit screen, LCD screen, digital counter, unlike the LED-based meters that were on the 424. And 464 had more or less the same features, but that liquid crystal display that it's got, it's not the most visible thing if you're in poor lighting conditions, so this is a step up in that respect. And so because this system's digital, then we've got a whole bunch of rehearsal, punch in and out, return to zero memory location features. That makes it more equivalent to the 464 and 246. I've actually done a video with a 44 Mark III demonstrating how all these things work, and the way that it's labelled and the way that you use it is more or less identical. It allows you to do things like set 2 locations on the tape independent from the 0 point of the counter. You can repeatedly play the section between the 2 locations so that you can rehearse, and you can set it up to punch in and punch out automatically, so you can have a hands-free experience being your own engineer, so to speak. As with all of these, it's a 2-head system, a raise head on the left, record and playback head on the right. Whether it's a recording signal being transmitted to the tape or a recorded signal being received from the tape depends on what the user is doing via these controls. It's dual speed, so the high speed will have you play back at 3 3/4 inches per second. That's double the speed of a normal tape. Normal, I guess, here means like the sort of cassettes you would buy from Tower Records back when Tower Records was still a company in the 90s. The idea with the double tape speed is that you get better fidelity because there's more particles of magnetic material passing over the playhead every second. I suppose the analogy you could make for that is if you think of a digital photo with more pixels, then it's a sharper image. And likewise, you're going to get something closer to high fidelity with a high speed tape recording. You can record all 4 tracks simultaneously. One of the nice things about this is that you can either record in a direct mode, which means that channel 1 of the mixer is attached to track 1 of the cassette player, etc, etc. But the other thing you can do is assign the tracks to either the left bus or the right bus. Tracks 1 and 3 are assignable to the left bus, and tracks 2 and 4 are assignable to the right bus. This means that, for instance, if I had 2 microphones on the bass and 2 microphones on the guitar, then I could pan both my guitar mics hard left and channels 1 and 2, and both my bass mics hard right and channels 3 and 4. And then what I could do is play back the drums that I'd already recorded on tracks 1 and 2, set track 3 to bus left, and then it's going to receive both of those guitar microphones on one track, and set track 4 to bus right, so it's going to receive both of those bass microphones onto track 4. So there's a facility to sort of blend multiple sources. Another way you can use that is you could take all 4 of these mics, maybe you've got snare mic, kick drum mic, and a pair of overheads. Make a stereo image out and blend out of all 4 channels, and then you could assign that to 2 tracks, and you have stereo drums and 2 tracks, and then you can overdub your other instruments on top of that. So in fact, by a combination of the techniques that I just explained, then you could conceivably in 2 passes get a 4-channel stereo capture of a drum kit, and then two mic instruments dubbed over the top of it. So it's not quite as flexible as the system that they have on the 246, but great deal more flexibility than some Portastudios anyway. It has DBX noise reduction system. You can defeat the whole thing via this switch here. You can also have it so it's on in tracks 1 through 3, but off in track 4. One of the facilities this has is that you can put whatever SMPTE MIDI synchronization data onto one of the 4 tracks, so that you're getting synchronization with external MIDI gear. Now in this day and age, I'm not sure how many people have an application for that, but before digital audio workstations was an affordable technology in the mid-90s when this came out, that was definitely a useful facility to have. But that's why you can opt not to have noise reduction on the 4th channel, because obviously noise reduction would prevent the synchronization data on track 4 from working properly. We've got direct tape outs for all 4 of the tape tracks. So if you want to capture 4 separate mono stems into a digital audio workstation, then you've got a facility to capture all 4 of those simultaneously without there being any drift or synchronization issues due to tiny fluctuations in the motor speed. So there isn't any phantom power. You would need an external preamp if you wanted to use condenser mics and power them that way, but there are 4 XLR inputs, so you could use dynamic mics using XLR to XLR cables, no problem. Alternatively, you've got these mic or line level inputs. So if your microphone cable terminated in a 1/4-inch jack, or you're just using like standard guitar cables to plug in a synth or a guitar or a bass directly, then you can use these inputs here. Also have these stereo inputs. There's just an overall level control for those. You can just use them minorly using these switches here or in stereo. They function as the effects returns, or you send your effects units through these 2 sockets and then you return them here. Your line output is here, your monitor output is here, headphone socket is down here. It's maybe just about slightly out of shot, but there's a 1/4-inch jack for headphones there. This level controls the overall level that you hear through the headphones, though obviously it's dependent on the fader levels and the master fader as well. On this unit, this row of effect sends is either an effect send or a tape cue, depending on how that switch is set. Tape cue is really just a facility so that you can monitor what you're listening to as you record, independently of the gain structure that's set up via the master fader and the channel fader. Essentially, it's 2 mixers in one. If it's in tape mode, then it's the levels coming back from the tape player. If the switches are set like that, then it's the level that's going into the tape player, and if it's in the middle, then it's not doing anything. Got low and high shelving EQ, and then a parametric mid EQ, which goes from 250 Hz up to 5000 Hz. I will double check, but I think it's 10k and 200 Hz are the cut-off frequencies for these shelving EQs. And unless you're using that as a tape cue, which I've already discussed, then you have option for 2 effect sends. Not having independent pan and EQ controls for your effects returns does put some limitations on how you can use these. If you're using them as 2 independent mono sends, then you can return those in the middle of your stereo image or panned hard left or right, but you can't kind of place them within the stereo field the way that you would be able to if you had effects returns. That's where 246 or 424 Mark III has an advantage. Last of all, we've got these pan controls, which in your tape mode mix down is where it's going to appear in the stereo image, but that does have a role in bouncing. Again, I will go more into that in the tutorial for this model. Your master fader, that's the left right bus. All of these faders, you can see they've got this greyed out area between 7 and 8. At that point, then it's unity gain, so the voltage at the input and the voltage at the output of the fader should be the same. You get a little bit of boost above the grey area, and then you'll cut right down to silence at the 0 point on these faders. In terms of taking this apart and fixing it, there's nothing too horrible in here. I've already done a video showing that there is a fragility to the internal transformer. The weight of it can damage the printed circuit board below. The motor that's in this unit and a lot of these Portastudio's Fostex models as well, they can burn out with time. It's a little bit awkward to take apart this area, like all the switches and so on are on multiple boards, so it's a little more intimidating to disassemble and reassemble. Because it has an internal transformer rather than an external wall wart, then if you're going to open it, you need to be a little bit careful, because you know, if you touch the AC that's coming out of your wall, then that's potentially lethal. So if you've got it plugged in and open, you must be careful not to touch this area. But apart from that, there's no particular warning I need to give about taking this on as a repair project. In the second-hand market, prices that these are going for, not terrible compared to the prices of some units. Like, I've done a video before saying how expensive the 414 Mark II has become just through celebrity users. This is a bit of a sleeper by comparison. It's got a lot more features than a 414, but quite often you'll see these changing hands for less money. The thing about this unit that I wish was the case with more of these is the fact that so many of the sockets are on the front, where it's really easy to see what you're doing, and so few of the sockets are way back. Ultimately, I do prefer its predecessor, the 464, and its successor, the 424 Mark III, just because both those units have 6-channel mixers. That's just better for me in the way I tend to use effect sends. The other thing that's, I wish that this had included, but also 246 and 424 Mark III, which I guess are my favourites, is that I wish that all of those units had 3 tape speeds like the 424 Mark I. That half speed, low fidelity setting on the 424 Mark I seems to be a one-off for that model. Whereas especially the way that these things are being used now, like more of a sort of ambient lo-fi texture thing as popularised by your Heinbachs and your Amulets of the world, then it would be so good if all of these came with a half speed. So yeah, it's not in my like top 3 Tascams, but it's definitely not my bottom 3. I mean, I suppose if I couldn't get a 424 Mark III or 464 or 246, then this would probably be my next choice, though 244, I really do like the double parametric EQ that's on that generation of Tascams. But yeah, it's a good unit, definitely worth having if you can get one at a good price. Check out my channel for lots more reviews, tears downs, repair tips, demos and tutorials. Thanks for watching. Bye.